Welcome to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.
What are the paranormal implications of suicide? If the paranormal really is about interacting parallel universes instead of just some spirit world, can there even be such a thing as death? What do our listeners have to say about it all?
Hey there, and welcome to the 101st Behind the Paranormal broadcast. I'm Ben, and that voice you just heard was that of my co-host and partner in the paranormal, my dad. We have no guests today, but we do have our weekly paranormal contest. Several people tried, but nobody got last week's question. The question was, where in Kansas did people report phantom Civil War soldiers firing into a creek in 2007? The soldiers disappeared when approached.
So we know you can do better than that. We're going to try it again, and we're going to give you a hint. The date was July 31st, 2007. It was a very interesting case, especially from the viewpoint of the multiverse point of view that we take, and it is on the internet. Okay, so give it a try again. I'll say it again. Where in Kansas did people report phantom Civil War soldiers? They were Union soldiers firing into a creek in 2007. The soldiers disappeared when approached. Very interesting case. It's happened several times. Anyway, call us locally, 401-766-1240, or from anywhere in the U.S. at 800-449-1240. Those are, of course, our call-in numbers today. If we don't announce the winner during the show and you still think you have the answer, drop a line to Ben at BehindTheParanormal.com.
The winner gets a copy of Footsteps in the Attic, one of my dad's most popular books.
There are also very few left, so, get it right. Now, we always publicize our show's guests and themes well in advance, usually on our website, certainly BehindTheParanormal.com, and on our different shows. But I don't remember any recent show where there was such interest in a subject after so many emails received beforehand. Our main subject today, suicide and its paranormal implications. Some of the emails we'll be reading and some of what we'll talk about today may be upsetting, so consider yourself warned. As a matter of fact, we're going to express some opinions here today that I have to say are our own and do not necessarily reflect those of WOON 1240 AM or any podcast carrier who might be making this show available and to which you might be listening later on. Again, Ben, if
here are our call-in numbers for today: 401-766-1240 in the local listening area, and 800-449-1240 from anywhere else in the United States.
Okay, I thought we'd open with 3 emails that speak for themselves. 2 are from teens, 1 is from a parent. They ask what's becoming a classic 21st century question: when there seems to be no way out, no hope, can the mysteries of the paranormal make death more appealing than life? Ben, I'll just give you these, I'll introduce them here. One is a question. This is from Charlie K. in Seattle. Okay, I'll just let you take it away.
Yeah, all right. I think your argument about death, even bodily death, being impossible in the multiverse makes a lot of sense. My life sucks. Why shouldn't I just kill myself and hope that my conscience will just pop up in a better life, or my consciousness, my bad, will just pop up in a better life when I'm living somewhere, or, as I've heard you say, somewhen else?
Number 2, that's obviously from a teen. Another one from a teen is from Brittany G. in Harrisville, Rhode Island.
I'm 15, and I'm very interested in the paranormal. Sometimes I feel like I can't take life anymore. Is dying and becoming a ghost such a bad thing? From what mediums say, there's no worries, and I'd be free.
Number 3 is from a parent. And this is from Lauren in Fort Worth, Texas.
All right. I don't know why I am writing to you, but I am so terrified. I've overheard my son, he's 17, talking to his friends about committing suicide, and maybe doing it together. I have called the doctor, and I'm going to try to get my son to go for counseling. I don't know why I'm writing to you, but I listen to your show when I can. Not only have your insights touched my heart, but so has your relationship with your own son. Please contact me.
Okay, let me just say that I am in touch with Lauren and her son, and we are working on their situation. So, and let me also say that, and this is difficult for me, but 49 years ago yesterday, I stood there, a 7-year-old boy, as my father committed suicide in our garage. To say the least, this subject has not only touched me, it has affected my whole life. So I've been there. Okay. Now, according to the Centers for Disease Control, suicide is now the third leading cause of death among Americans 15 to 24 years old, exceeded only by traffic accidents and murder. Believe it or not, it's now the fourth leading cause of death among children 10 to 14 years of age. What is going on here?
The official government list of things that lead kids to commit suicide are divorce of parents, violence in the home, inability to find success at school, feelings of worthlessness, rejection by friends and peers, substance abuse, death of someone close to the teenager, and the suicide of a friend or someone he or she knows online.
So what do you think, Ben? Is that enough to explain it? You're 17.
I guess. There's a lot of other factors to it. Like, I've talked to kids that are like, you know what, I want to, like, die and stuff. And most of my friends that smoke, they just do it so they'll kill them faster.
Wow.
And they just, I don't know, they don't get along with their parents and stuff. They don't get along with certain people. They just dislike everything about our, like, the nature of our society, the nature of, like, everything. It's just, it shouldn't be that way, you know?
Yeah. No, I hear you. Well, I think this list is a start, but as with most ideas or concepts in our society, they're too shallow, they don't go far enough, they're too narrow, they're only a beginning. Now, in my experience, and I have looked at it from various points of view, spiritually, studying for the priesthood for many years, or working in psychiatric hospitals as a grad student in abnormal psychology, and even especially as a paranormal investigator for the last 40 years, you run into these things. And God help you if you can't give people decent advice, or better yet, point them to people who can. Because, you can be responsible for a lot of things that go wrong if you don't know what you're doing. Anyway, in my experience, what leads young people or anybody else to contemplate or then commit suicide can be traced to the same things that lead any thinking person to feel a little bit unsatisfied, just a little out of place or frustrated in daily life, and to feel that we've worked all our lives, or will have to work all our lives, for something we never quite achieve. Conversely, it's the same thing that draws so many of us toward the unseen, toward the promise or the hope of something higher than what we see around us, toward the paranormal and all that that means, toward God, whether he, she, it, or them. On the level of daily life, it powers our desire for social and political change. It draws us to higher ideals, whether in the form of, quote, family values, national health care, or whatever we grasp at in the hope of somehow making it all better. This inner thing that ultimately drives us either into the abyss of suicide or into the highest realizations of human love and achievement is the certainty deep in our souls that what we have become is not worthy of what we are. What we are was revealed to me simply and beautifully by an old Australian Aborigine in 1979, of all people. In our biology and in our attitudes, we are still hunter-gatherers. We are constructed to depend on each other and to work together as part of nature. Down deep, we know that together means life and alone means death. We know that we are each other, and that wholeness is infinitely greater than all of us, and that's where our experience of God begins. But, beguiled by greed, comfort, lies, and maybe a few unseen enemies or intruders that we sometimes talk about on this show, we have become the opposite. Instead of standing together, we stand alone, or in friendships that amount only to shared loneliness. All too often, we don't love each other. We love ourselves through each other. We're sexually frustrated for a million reasons, one of which is that we are constructed to be parents by the age of 13 or 14. And when it comes to the paranormal, the key to understanding everything, we either scoff or we feverishly embrace some narrow view of it in the desperate hope that there's a, quote, afterlife, unquote, or some kind of spirit guide out there watching out for us. So unnatural is the society we've inflicted upon ourselves that we've even corrupted God. Modern popular religion has turned God into a sort of great cosmic individual, jealous, self-obsessed, and rewarding humans with a quote-unquote salvation that allows them to remain individual not only after they die, but forever. Even the once respected clergy are viewed with suspicion in an age of such ferociously selfish acts as pedophilia. Even those among us who are generous, loving, kind, good parents, good friends, good people, and there are plenty of these, still have the nagging feeling now and then that it's not quite good enough. Now, as this society passes through its old age toward the inevitable end that all societies reach, all of us feel the increasing pressure and frustration. For us parents, we sometimes mourn the great institutions we once respected. The government, the church, even the institution of marriage and the family itself. I remember as a kid of 10, we used to go down to Washington, D.C. a lot because my brother taught at the at a university there. I would stand outside the White House and gaze through the bars of the fence in awe. I wonder if, any of us could do that today. Everything seems to be falling apart sometimes. And we have to work like horses just to keep our belovedly unnatural lifestyle going. We feel that our children don't appreciate it. As a matter of fact, we don't even know our children. We feel as though we've given birth to strangers. And for teens, I think it's even worse.
Yeah, like one of my closest friends, like he just can't get along with his dad. Like they don't understand each other. And they're just, like, yesterday he was just listening to music in his room and he was listening to John Coltrane, famous jazz musician. And, like, actually, no, it was Tom York. It was his album feeling like he was being pulled apart by horses or something. Wow. So his dad comes in, and he's like, what do you listen to? And he was like, yeah, well, I'm listening to Being Pulled Apart by Horses. And he was like, oh, is that what you feel like? And started laughing.
What?
Yeah, isn't that messed up?
Yes.
And I was just
That's real division.
Yeah, and he just can't get along with his dad, like, no matter what. Like, he's tried. Like, even over Christmas, he was saying, like, I don't know if I should get my dad a gift. I was like, just do it, man. Just get him a gift.
Yeah.
Because, like, at least show that you kind of care about him and you want to, like, repair this. And he was like, yeah, I know what you're saying. But it's just so messed up. And he's not the only one. Like, one of my other close friends, like, if he does one thing wrong, his parents flip out on him and ground him for months at a time. Let's say he gets a C- in a class. He gets grounded for, like, the rest of the quarter. And it's really ridiculous. And I mean, come on, I pass, I get decent grades, and you understand that I put my best effort in, more or less, and like no one else does. They're just like, why don't you just like try harder? You can do so much better. I'm like, but I don't want to.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what I want to do.
Yeah.
And you seem to be the only person that kind of understands that.
Yeah, well, Mom thinks I'm a little bit, but I mean, I remember what it was like. And I wish more parents did. Did you have anything else to say on that? It's really.
I'll throw in other things.
Yeah, please, because your insights are. I know. People need to talk like this. And I'm not sure that most parents appreciate the pressure that most teens are under today. Get into the best school, achieve, make us proud, meet a nice guy or girl and settle down, make lots of money, so you can become what the TV ads talk about. And then the judge says, do you want to live with your mother or your father? You know, I don't blame teens for contemplating suicide. Who needs such a world? None of us does. Not parents, not teens, not Republicans, not Democrats, not Americans, not African Bushmen, not Christians, not Muslims.
We need to find a way back.
We do.
But
now,
one movie I like that points out like the things in society that like are wrong is Fight Club. Ironically, like like no one sees how some people just watch it for the fights and like, oh, good action movie. It's like that's not the point of it. The whole point of Fight Club is to point out how our society is driven by like commercialism.
Yeah. And
how like to escape it. Like this dude creates his own like imaginary friend to escape it. It just destroys society pretty much.
Yeah, with consumer. You know, I hate the word consumer. You know, I've been professionally. I'm an editor. I've been for many, many years. I will not allow, or never did allow, the word consumer in any of my publications or any of my books. I certainly haven't written it in any of my books. I hate the word. Remember, you know, is that what we've become? As opposed to what we are? I mean, I think absolutely. And it leaves us empty. We would constantly search for distractions to prevent us from discovering the truth. And that's that we are disunited in such an unnatural way that we want to kill ourselves.
Yeah.
Some, you know, in the extreme situations. Anyway, remember that email from Lauren about overhearing her son from Texas talking about her son talking about suicide? And the first thing I pointed out to her when we spoke on the phone was that in all that she said about talking to the doctor, talking to a counselor, talking to me, she never once mentioned talking to her son. But we'll get back to that in a minute. Now, what about the other two emails we opened with, the teens who think that paranormal realities, some of which they heard about on this show or read about in my books, provide an easy out to happier worlds through suicide? Well, in the theories of the multiverse that I've relied on for over 30 years in my paranormal research, now working with Ben at my side,
yes.
It's become obvious that all of us, our physical bodies included, form a vast unity of life across an infinite expanse of interacting parallel worlds. Paranormal phenomena are the tip that shows us where this iceberg begins. The danger lies in misunderstanding the idea that because we live in so many of these worlds already, that we cannot die, not even our bodies. Hence, the idea that we can just hop worlds through suicide until our consciousness lands us in one that we like. But there's a big problem with that. To be good, right, and true, and to make you happy in any way, your actions must reflect this unity with yourself and with others that we've been talking about. And suicide is the ultimate act of individualism, the ultimate act of selfishness, the ultimate act of disunity. Now, I'm not just making this stuff up. This is not just the Eno philosophy. This is what I've learned firsthand through study of and at times interaction with those who have actually done it. With people you might refer to as ghosts. But they are not ghosts. They are real, physical people we sometimes perceive across the membranes, as physicists say, of parallel worlds. Worlds in which they have to, as it were, sleep in their own beds, the beds they made, in whatever worlds they came from prior to that. That's nature's way, the path of least resistance. And it applies to the path of your consciousness through the bodily death experience, just as it does to any other process in nature. So, almost all of them, because of that ultimate act of selfishness, suicide, got what they wished for. They find themselves where they already are in their subconscious lives, in whole universes where they are utterly, desolately, and completely alone. They smashed the unity, and the unity spat them out, at least temporarily. There are ways to reach them, and that we'll talk about on our March 21st Sunday show on CBS Radio when we deal with paranormal love and beauty, something I don't like to lose sight of when we talk about the negative stuff. Now, are you starting to get it, parents and kids? The message of the paranormal is not that there is an afterlife, or even that you've got angels and ancestors or whatever looking out for you. The message of the paranormal is that you don't have to be alone anymore. The paranormal provides the answer to suicide, not the excuse for it. Parents, your teens don't need pills. They don't need shrinks, and they don't need special schools. They need you. And they need God, the real God. Listen to them. Hear them. Get outside the narrowness that society's inflicted on you. Become big enough to understand them. As a matter of fact, appreciate their wisdom. You might find that they are far more than you do. Correct what you know or believe are their errors, but embrace their dissatisfaction. When it comes to society and disunity, you should be just as upset as they are. Teens, your enemy is not, and Ben, please magnify this or whatever.
Yeah.
Your enemy is not your parents. They're just as alone and terrified as you are. Your enemy is society's lies. But don't believe that that can't be overcome. When it comes to starting toward unity, clarity, and happiness, your family is square one. For parents, teens, all of us, focus. The journey we begin together is very much like that of Frodo the Hobbit on the way to Mordor in the story The Lord of the Rings. I swore Tolkien knew all this stuff. We have a long road toward recovering what we've lost and to get rid of what we don't want. There are many enemies, lies, and the paranormal parasites we often talk about on this show. Don't underestimate them. Those who in their own anger and loneliness would grab us by the hair and drag us apart. But we're not going to let them do it, are we, anymore? I'm sick of it. I hope you are. But we'll also find friends in unexpected places and at unexpected times, and we will have guidance. So be of good courage. It's the first day of school, and the first lesson we learn is, what do you learn in kindergarten? Hold hands when you cross the street. That's the lesson for life. The ultimate lesson is not that we go to other worlds when we die. It's that we can reach out together and bring those better worlds literally and materially to ours, like the shamans do. Then we can live in the real world, but we have to be together.
A little off topic, but here's our call-in number here today. 401-766-1240 in the local listening area, and 800-449-1240 from anywhere else in the USA.
So that's all I have to say on that subject. I could go into more emails and cases, but I hope you get the point. Ben, you got any more comments?
Well, you have an uncanny ability to verbalize what can't be said, as one of my friends just stated, because he texted me.
No, well, thank you very much.
And
it's what I feel, what I've seen. I don't know.
It's just like some people, like, they write it out and they just don't know how to say it, but you know exactly how to say it because you just have an uncanny way with rhetoric and the spoken word.
Well, thank you, Socrates.
You're welcome. And it just sounded so powerful and completely right. And yeah, it was good.
Well, thank you. I hope people get it. That's all I can say. Okay. Well, we have our commercial. We're going to take a commercial break here at the bottom of the hour. We'll be right back behind the paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno, and we will keep going. We'll do some emails and talk about some cases and take some calls.
New River Press is proud to sponsor tonight's segment of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Benjamin Eno. New River Press offers the best in unusual New Age books. Stand by the side of tonight's host, Paul Eno, as he battles poltergeists and helps suffering souls and families in the critically acclaimed books Faces at the Window and Footsteps in the Attic. Plunge deeper into the paranormal with Paul and learn about its influence on human history, its action in our daily lives, and its ultimate meaning for us in the best-selling Turning Home, God, Ghosts, and Human Destiny. Available now from New River Press, publishers of unusual books. Visit newriverpress.com, amazon.com, or your favorite bookstore. And set for release late this year in one of the most unusual books on the subject ever written, Paul gives us Dancing Past the Graveyard, What Ghosts Have to Say About God.
Okay, welcome back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. Our subject today has been suicide, particularly as it relates to teens and the paranormal implications thereof. I think we've covered the subject to some degree. Invite your comments, certainly, 766-1240 or 800-449-1240, or drop us an email during the week at eno@onworldwide.com or through our website, behindtheparanormal.com. We're going to get into some emails here, and then we'll try to update some cases, and I hope that one or two of our reporters, field reporters, will be calling in from various parts of the country to fill us in on what they're doing. And we do have a new reporter, too, David Marsh from Portage, Indiana, who we welcome. And David is a paranormal investigator. He's also a professional in the environmental field, and he's got some interesting points of view and is very interested in shamanism and chakras. Okay, and we did a show on shamanism last week, and we're going to be having Sandra Ingerman back on our 2-hour special on our South Dakota station very soon, actually the 31st of January. Now, Ben, you want me to read this one? Because this is awfully long, and I'm going to have to stop at different points.
You should go for it.
Okay. All right, this is a question about heaven, hell, and the multiverse. It's from Eric in North Carolina. Okay. And Eric writes, I have read at some length your observations, experiences, and opinions regarding the nature of our universe, our space-time continuum, and via quantum theory, which I do have a familiarity with. Okay, stick with us. Eric gets a little kind of deep here, so stick with us. But no doubt, like so very many, I have wrestled with this matter. If inaccurately, I viewed myself as, oh, then, if this is to be so, am I but one link in an endless chain of me's? Okay, let me address that bit. This goes on, but this has been a question that has often arisen, and this endless chain of me's across these parallel worlds. Well, I don't know if it's endless, but I think we exist in a lot of these worlds. That's the indication I've received from paranormal research over all these years. And yes, and this is what we just talked about too in reference to suicide. You exist in many of these worlds. It's all you. But it's not just you. See, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to individualism. It goes beyond just you. We share a unified life across all these worlds, and that involves everybody. So it's not just you. And the example I always use is from the book of, is from the Gospel of Matthew, and I've cited it many times, and I'll cite it once more today. First of all, the English translations of the Bible are pretty lousy, and when you read the one that we often hear, one quotation is, "Love your neighbor as yourself." But in Greek, the language in which it was written originally, it says, love your neighbor because he is yourself. That expresses everything we've been trying to say. These me's are not just me's, they're us's. And in order to fully understand our lives, our unified life in the multiverse, it's a matter of understanding that it's not about me, it's not about you, it's about us. Okay, so there is an endless chain of me's, Eric, but it's an endless chain of us's, really. It's a great unity. Eric goes on, am I this immaterial? Am I, by that light, not unique? Okay, so this is a question of, if we share this life, have we lost our uniqueness as human beings? And the way I put it, it's like each of us is a unique expression of all of us, and all of us are a unique expression of each of us. Now, you think about that. It's not just a word game. I think that it really expresses the reality. You can be united and unique. Look at your body, for example. And this is almost a theological reference. People talk about the body of Christ. You know, your finger does not do the same thing as your nose does, okay? But it's still part of the same body. It's part of the same unity. And as a matter of fact, when the finger feels pain, the whole body feels pain. When the nose feels pain, or the eye, or whatever, this is an example. You know, it is unique, but it is part of the whole, and its life is indissoluble from that of the whole. Eric goes on, yet am I understanding that I dwell in many places and at once. Yeah, well, this is the hardest concept of the whole multiverse idea, that we share these, that we have these simultaneous lives. And, you know, I've often mentioned on the show where that I speak very frequently with regression therapists. These are hypnotists who will take you back to your quote-unquote past lives. Now, in physics, pretty much it's been shown, especially by Einstein, that time as we know it isn't really there. There is no objective, real past to future flow. What it is a function of our consciousness. So time, as far as past and future, within the multiverse exists all at once. Everything that is, or can be, or will be, or has been, exists all at once. Okay, so and they can be accessed. So these lives that you're living ought to show up in some of these. If hypnotism is legitimate and all this stuff is legitimate, it should show up in these regression therapy sessions. And I ask them, do you ever have people subjects who describe worlds that you don't recognize? Because they'll say, well, they'll always ask them what year it is, assuming it's a past life, and somebody will say it's 1835 or this. And one of them, the most recent one I spoke with, said that, yeah, it's funny you should ask. There had been a subject who had said it was some year way in the 24th century sometime. And others who had described worlds that they just did not recognize using dates that were combinations of letters and numbers that they just couldn't make head or tail out of. So if this is legit, here's an indication that we have future lives as well as past lives. And I believe that our entire subconscious, I think there's plenty of evidence for this, our entire subconscious is made up of these lives we're living. Because the hardest thing to grasp is, okay, we're here in Rhode Island or Detroit or Seattle or Chicago or wherever, or Southern Africa or Europe, and we're conscious of our lives now, we're conscious of our own children, of what we're doing. How could we be living independent lives somewhere else? Well, they're not independent lives, they're part of your subconscious. And they've never found, they being science, never found the precise explanation or location in the brain for memory or imagination. And I think that's because when we're talking about the multiverse, that's where our memories and imaginations come from. I hesitate to say this because I don't know, the word psychic has so much baggage, but at the insistence of people I trusted some years ago, I made a brief but I think ill-advised foray into the psychic realm. I did readings for people and things like this, and I never quite felt comfortable with it because of the intimacy of the experience. I wouldn't use spirit guides or any of this 19th century stuff. What I would do is try to put myself where I was them in a certain part of the multiverse, because somewhere, somewhen, each of us is each other. And so this is a literal truth. And this would happen to me. I would sort of become, I would have their memories to some degree, their imagination, and it was frightening. It was a terribly intimate experience. It was beautiful in many ways, but it frightened me and it frightened the people I did readings for. So I stopped it. And I just said, this is, I don't know, I'm not quite up to this. So anyway, this is, we are all over the place in the multiverse, and we are a unity. We're not different individuals in the multiverse. We are this sort of unity, and that's in our consciousness and in our subconscious, and it comes forward when we need it for survival purposes, or when sometimes when we just want it to, and it can be very frightening. So this is all evidence to me that this philosophy is correct. It is Eric continues, it is daunting and confusing. You're darn right it is, Eric. I was brought up in a Christian home in a Baptist faith that teaches of a heaven and a hell, two separate and very different destinations for every person when they leave this earth, as it were. So in all this quantum philosophy, where would that fit in? Okay, well, you find that in all the sacred scriptures, in even ancient documents that don't claim to be sacred scriptures, we often have had shows on human origins. We talk about not only Genesis in the Bible, but we talk about the Atrahasis of the Akkadian Empire. We talk about the Karsag epics of the Sumerians, and all these different ancient documents that talk about creation and gods and all this stuff. And the common theme that runs through this is one of unity and disunity. I think that theologically, the earliest Christians believed that hell was not necessarily some place where you go and burn, literally. There is a reason from that in ancient folklore, but there was a belief that hell is separation from God, and as a consuming fire, figuratively speaking, that because we are constructed to be unified, especially with God. When you're not, then it's hell. Remember what we were talking about with my experience with people who committed suicide? They seemed to be in worlds and universes where they were utterly alone, because that's where they wanted to be by their act. Okay, one might say, well, that doesn't seem very fair if they were insane or whatever. Well, that's a subject for another show, and there are explanations for that too. You might accept them, you might not. But the point is that hell is a big word. Okay, not all religions believe it. I have a problem with the literal interpretation of it, but again, I think that it's an exercise of disunity will put you in hell, even if you're still here, or wherever you may be, or whenever you may be. It's up to you. Heaven is, of course, the opposite, which is unity, especially with God, because that's what we're made for. The finger cut off from the body, utterly alone. I mean, what is it? It dies, but united with the body, it fulfills its function and is fulfilled, okay, so to speak. So that's the idea there. But the Christian, I don't think any religion I know of really is good enough or has retained enough of this idea about the multiverse to really tell us everything we need to know. Now, I'm sorry if that offends anyone, but that's the way I feel. Okay, now here is Eric going on now. Okay. I confess that I do not have all my spiritual ducks in order. Well, most of us don't. I have not cemented everything. I have a complicated mind, and faith is a tricky thing to me, but I feel it is worth believing in and should be. I agree. One thing I find with my own background, which is very academic, how would you ever know that? I studied for 10 years in the seminary and then did graduate work in just about everything, because I'm interested in everything. I found that as I began to develop the multiverse experience, as I researched cases and found that they were leading me toward this position. And again, I didn't invent the term multiverse. Dr. David Deutsch at Oxford University did, a renowned physicist. He happens to agree pretty much with the way I look at it. Others have other ideas, but as I developed that from experience, I believe, that idea, it was a matter of changing my life started to change. And we sometimes get emails here. People who've read about this or have begun to experience it, they begin to experience life that they're living already in some of these parallel universes. Now, the danger there is that our science and our society is not quite up to this. And I would encounter people in psychiatric wards when I was a grad student who were doing nothing but experiencing their parallel lives. They were together, to use the 70s term. They seemed to be fine, but they were locked up because our science couldn't deal with the notion of these parallel lives. These people were considered schizophrenic, and some of them actually were. And I'm not saying that all these illnesses are actually people experiencing real worlds, but I think some of them are. And sometimes the illnesses can be intertwined with the realities, and it gets very complicated. So I would find that when I would let it go, when I would simply meditate and pray according to my own rule of prayer that I have, it would start to come together. The more you analyzed it, sometimes with your brain, the less sense it would make, and it would go away. But if you leave it alone, let it be, as I guess that's a Beatles song. Yeah. It would start to come together. And Ben is experiencing that, I think, far more than I am. Many times, I learn from him and his experiences with the multiverse, and it can be very gentle. And there are many good forces out there who will help us become what we're supposed to be. So anyway, I hope that's clear, but that's what I would say to Eric here. Eric goes on, am I making any sense here? Well, I'll ask you, Eric. I hope I'm making sense here. I'm also a huge fan of Star Trek. I get alternate worlds, alternate timelines, other dimensions. Yeah, but I mean, it's the way they're presented and the way they're understood and the way they're experienced, especially. I think of the old show Quantum Leap. Hollywood never quite gets it right. People leaping from one world to another. Well, these worlds are passing through us all the time. It's not that we're in one and we can reach another, or we see one across the membrane of another and say, aha, a ghost, which is actually a person just living their lives in one of these worlds. Well, I think there's more intimacy than that. These things interact all the time, sometimes not quite according to our consciousness stream. You put something down on a table, you turn around, it's gone. These are all just experiences, I think, that we have all the time and say, aha, it's just one of those things, but it's an example. These worlds pass through each other all the time. Now, Eric shifts gears here, and he says, I love creating them, presumably other worlds, and pondering adventures in that wonderful landscape. I think he's using a theory that you sometimes get where if you, I have a bottle of soda in front of me right now, if I drop it on the floor and spill it all over the booth, I'm creating a world in which that happened, and the world in which I did not do that keeps going on and creates a separate universe. That's the very common interpretation of this. I don't know if that's good enough, but that's the way it's interpreted. Anyway, I think I'm starting to get a headache because of all this thinking, and I'm going to go on to probably a different, a few case reports here. But Eric, thank you for writing in, and I'm going to deal with this email in its entirety in a different show. But you're an example, Eric, of the kind of thinking people who really appreciate our show, and all listeners are welcome. But we really try to serve those who just feel that other shows on this subject are just too shallow. So, Eric, thank you for getting us going there on that. Now, we have a report from Donna in Connecticut. Donna is sort of a star on our show here. She's the resident of one of the most amazing homes we've ever investigated, and we refer to her home as Connecticut's Skinwalker Ranch. Now, Skinwalker Ranch is a famous case in Utah where all sorts of things happen, from ghosts and cattle that move themselves from one pasture to another without walking, to UFOs and all sorts of things. People see, and this has been investigated supposedly by a group of scientists who stood there and watched holes open in the sky and UFOs coming through, holes opening in the air and strange creatures. And this is talking about the multiverse. This seems to be a perfect example of that. So this case in Connecticut is not quite so dramatic, but Ben, we started when? In 2005 with a bunch of ghosts, and we go back now and then. And now it's turning into a major UFO case in that part of Connecticut. So this is just a report from Donna that we received recently, and she keeps us updated several times weekly on what has been going on, because it's like a psychic circus, if you will. Here's just a selection. My daughter was home last night and almost called us to come home from our son's house. This is not a duplex house, but the daughter lives on one side with her son, and Donna and her husband live on the other. The daughter, heard a long, very loud moaning sound coming from the vent by her stairs, and it was not the furnace. It was not running. It was an actual moan, like by a person, or what the old movies portray as a ghost as doing. She listened, and music began to play through the vent. We have heard music playing down there before and identified this song as Mountain Laurel Time. It's interesting. Mountain laurel is the state flower of Connecticut, if that has anything to do with it. Then an odor filled the house like kerosene, and it was strong enough to make her eyes water, and she said that it got into her throat. She thought something had maybe spilled or was going on down in the cellar, or so she braved it up and went down there. Everything was quiet. Okay, now here's just another example of what goes on. They've lived in this house all their lives, these folks. As a matter of fact, 6 generations of their family has lived here. One of the first things Ben and I found when we went on our initial investigation in 2005 was that all 6 generations of these folks seemed to be living in this house. You could feel them passing by when we sat at the table, and everybody seemed to have peaceful coexistence. But being a sort of grand central terminal of the multiverse, you get all kinds of strange worlds coming together with all sorts of interesting creatures and different things happening. Here's another note from Donna. This morning, my husband opened the shade and aimed his car starter toward his car. He noticed that my daughter's car was not in the driveway behind his. It was there when we came home at 8:30 last night and was in the yard all night. It was 5:45 this morning, and the car was not there. My husband walked outside and looked all over the driveway and in the lower yard. It was absolutely not there. He came in and woke my daughter up to tell her that he thought someone had stolen her car. While he was waiting for her, he went back outside, and the car was sitting exactly where it should have been. He came home tonight and told us on no uncertain terms that he absolutely positively knew that the car was not there. 15 minutes later, I was sitting where it had been the night before. My husband is a manufacturing engineer and therefore has an analytical mind. He was just shaking his head. Well, I've heard this car thing before, and again, it's an example of worlds crossing. You look out the window, and you got one world where it's not there and another one where it is, and it's as simple as that. I had a case in Attleboro, it's before your time, Ben. Yes. Attleboro, Massachusetts, when the family literally looked out the window, saw their car in the driveway. There was a bang in back of them. They looked back out the window, and the car was facing in the opposite direction. Obviously, no way it could have moved. It was a matter of a split second. So here we go. I think another example of the possible multiverse situations here. Okay, now we've got... now this one, if you happen to be looking at BehindTheParanormal.com, or you can look at it now if you are sitting in front of a computer, look at our talking points page for this show. Just click on that on any of our pages, BehindTheParanormal.com, and you see a picture of what we're going to describe now. Now Donna describes, this is in the week of December 15th, a bright pink orb moving around in their living room. Now, orbs are controversial little figures. They're just balls of light, seemingly. They come out in a lot of photos. And if you have a photo that is taken with a regular camera, if you lighten it up, sometimes you see these orbs. We have a call? Okay, great. We'll leave our orb for a moment to take a call. And hi, you're on Behind the Paranormal. Hello? Okay, we got, when we get...
Hello?
Oh, hello, yes.
Yes, Paul, this is David Marsh. How are you today?
Oh, very good. I'm sorry, I can barely hear you. Did you say it was David?
Yes, it is.
Oh, wonderful. I can still barely hear you, but hopefully the audience... Can you turn that up a bit? That right there. Actually, on the on the right, the gray button on the far right. Gee, I didn't think I knew anything about this board. David, I'm sorry. Well, everyone, David Marsh, as I said, is our newest reporter. We talked about you at the bottom of the hour, David, and we're very, very happy to have you with us. And so why don't you introduce yourself to the folks and tell us what you have to say.
Yes, again, I'm David Marsh. I'm out of Portage, Indiana. I've been a paranormal investigator for over 5 years. I also do shamanic energy work. I've been involved with that over the past year and a half. And I've also been very involved over the past year in chakra development through acupuncture and shamanic energy work in order to enhance my sensitivity to the paranormal.
Excellent. Well, it brings up a very good point that up until recent years, a lot of paranormal investigators have not been interested in working with psychics or shamans or any people of this kind, and now that seems to be changing.
Well, one of the rules I follow is I want to back up everything I perceive as a sensitive with evidence. So it helps if I get an EVP where you'll hear me say, I feel there's a presence in the room, and then I may get a voice on the EVP or something that is of interest.
Now, what EVP being electronic voice phenomena, it's a common form of clue today that people often use. Now, how many other people do you work with?
Well, I have a partner in my group. My group is Paranormal Guys, and I have one partner, so we keep it small. And we do include other people in some hunts, especially when we get into some of the private hunts. We've recently did a private hunt at Waverly Hills Tuberculosis Sanatorium, and Villisca, Iowa, which was the site of an axe murder at the turn of the century.
Oh, nice. All right. So what did you find?
Well, mostly at Villisca was personal experiences. We did the light rods and orbs that were visible to the eye.
Okay.
At Waverly Hills, we did get some direct responses to questions on our EVPs and a couple interesting photographs.
All right.
Again, all being subject to the observer of this evidence.
Sure. I was just pointing out when you called that we were talking about Donna, your colleague reporter from Connecticut, and the pink orb that came. I've very seldom seen pink orbs. Have you?
No. I've seen red, and I've heard a theory that the more reddish the tone, the more angry the spirit can be. I haven't seen anything that backs that theory up, but I have heard that theory.
Yeah, I mean, it's from folklore. I suppose you can draw conclusions with. But this one, she goes on to say, and as I was telling everyone, we have a picture of these two pictures of orbs at the Talking Points page for this show at BehindTheParanormal.com. But these seem to be, she said, it looked as though one had wings, almost fairy-like. And this is a subject that occasionally comes up on the show. But I don't know, I just, people can look and see for themselves. So, anyway, I just want to, we're coming down to the end here, but I want to thank you for calling in, David. We'll look forward to your reports. And I just want to remind everyone, people can apply to become reporters to the show. All we want is that you are reliable and can take a serious approach to the subject, can, when possible, gather evidence for what you're going to report or talk to witnesses, or if you've witnessed it yourself. You don't have to agree with our theories. We're completely open-minded here. It's an open forum for any opinions, and we welcome anyone to apply for that. So, David, we look forward to hearing your reports, and is there anything else you'd like to leave us with today?
No, other than anybody in the Midwest that has something they'd like me to look at, please contact me through my email at david@behindtheparanormal.com.
Very good. You got it up and running.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not always so easy. Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
Okay, David, we'll talk to you very soon. Thanks for calling in.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. Okay, David Marsh, folks, one of our field reporters for Behind the Paranormal. And we've got 1 or 2 minutes here. Let me just finish with this pink orb thing. Again, behindtheparanormal.com. Go to our Talking Points page, and right at the top is the stuff for this show. And anyway, Donna continues to write here. Here are a couple of older photos that I was just able to get off from my discs. These pink orbs were frequently hanging around by the bathroom door. Now, there's a lot of discussion on what orbs are. I personally don't think they are spirits or ghosts. I mean, I suppose they could be. I mean, I've run into some that seem to have faces in them. But I think that very often they are plasma-based life forms, something that has been speculated about by astrobiologists, people who talk about extraterrestrial life, that feed around these boundaries of these different worlds. Because we find that this house in Connecticut is full of them. Very often they turn up in photos in areas where you're having paranormal stuff going on. So, in any case, Ben, did you want to finish reading this?
Where did you leave off from?
Okay.
All right. I have a box of discs that I am looking for, and as soon as I find them, I will review and see what is on them. I know they are mostly orbs, or orb photos, with maybe a couple of interesting ones. There is one in particular that I want to find, which was taken a year ago on a frosty evening over by the pear tree. I photographed 2 twin elfin and fairy-like objects. They appeared to have wings, but were not bugs. When I find more, I will send them to you. I don't know if you are interested in EVP recordings, but I have a few of those too.
Oh, yeah.
Much of these tapes are full of voices as if they were an audience applauding in the background. Haven't tested it out in a while, but if you have a digital recorder, it may be interesting to bring along when you come over. We usually get little children on our tapes giggling over something we had just said. ... Donna.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, this whole EVP thing is very interesting. A lot of people put a lot of stock in it. I don't know what Ben's opinion, but I'm not sure about a lot of it. There are many explanations for these things, although I must say there are some very striking ones. We have a friend in New Hampshire who actually has conversations with these things. The question is, what is he talking to, and is it what it says it is? That's a big question mark for us. But one time, the first time I tried to do that was many years ago, and I had an old reel-to-reel tape recorder, an old cassette tape recorder, and I put it just on the stairway in an old house, and when I left, I went and had lunch, came back, and what I found on the tape, there was no one in the house, was people having dinner. Okay, mm-hmm. And you could even hear people belching, burping, and this, and laughing, and that indicated to me 2 things. First of all, I mean, are these ghosts having dinner? Of course, again, the whole ghost explanation, spirits of the dead thing, is not good enough as far as I'm concerned. So again, I thought perhaps a parallel reality here, where the people from 1820 or whatever were having dinner, and because you used to be able to, I guess, burp without being corrected in the 19th century. Anyway, so we'll continue to talk about these things as we go. So we only have a minute left here. I wanted to just say thanks to our producer, who today is Nicole LePage, correct? And we'll see you next week, Saturday, January 16th, right here on ON 1240 AM and ONWorldwide.com at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific. Our guest will be Terry Mansfield, author and speaker, and the subject, World Peace Through the Paranormal.
And on our regular Sunday show at 7 p.m. Eastern and 4 Pacific on CBS Radio, www.newskyradio.com, our guest will be Father Anthony Perkins from St. Michael's Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and we don't have much time left, so I'll leave the rest.
Okay, well, he's right here in Woonsocket. And that'll be the first in an occasional series, The Paranormal and Religion, various viewpoints. And thank you for listening today, and we'll see you next week.
All right.
Keep your stick on the ice.
Yeah.
Return to this radio frequency 167 hours from now for another edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.